In this lesson, we're going to learn more about the content browser. Alright, so the content browser is our window into creating, importing, organizing, viewing, and modifying our content assets. I wanted to take another lesson to talk about this because it's really important, because this is how you do everything, bringing everything in. This is where everything lives, and being able to use the content browser is going to be very helpful for you. So to get started, let's take a look at the interface really quickly. Right up here at the top, we have the navigation bar. The navigation bar will allow you to create new assets, import assets, and even save your assets. You also have the ability to navigate using these tools here to go back to a previous folder that you were in before, or to even move forward. You also have the ability to modify where you're at based on this breadcrumb. So you can see that we're currently in the props folder here, as you can see that highlighted here as well. Now, using the navigation bar, we'll also use the sources view here, and this will allow you to left click and select the different folders and see what's inside of those folders. Okay. Now, from the source view, we have our asset management area. So if there are any assets in a specific folder, like architecture, you can see all of your assets here. Now, this allows us to very quickly grab what we need, drag that into our level, and go from there. But both of these views have a search, okay, which it can be very helpful whenever we have a very large project. So sometimes whenever we're working on projects, we may have hundreds of folders, if not thousands of folders. And so what we'll want to do is we'll want to be able to search through those very quickly. So let's say, all right, I need a prop, and I know that I have a props folder, so I'm going to go ahead and type that in. So I'm going to type in prop, and it's going to minimize that and bring up the relevant folder for that. Then I can go ahead and select that. And then once I'm inside of that folder, I could even come in and start selecting or searching for a very specific prop that I'm looking for. So in this case, I wanted to look for, let's say, a chair. Notice that whenever I type that in, it brings up any materials and even a static mesh. Now, we also have filters in the asset view here. And what this will allow me to do is it will allow me to turn on and search for very specific things. So let's say that I'm not looking for the chair materials. We may have hundreds of chairs. I want to look for the static mesh chairs. So if I simply check that, it will only show me those static meshes. Okay. Now notice the naming convention that we have here on our objects. Notice that we have SM_chair. SM stands for static mesh. If I turn that off, if I simply left click on that filter, that will show me anything without that filter turned on. Notice the material, it has a prefix of M. Okay, this is a great naming convention. Go ahead and left click on that static mesh again. Notice it's highlighted in blue and it turns on that filter. Now we can remove filters by simply left clicking on filters and then unchecking that. Okay, perfect. Let's also clear out our search by hitting the X here, or just hitting backspace to remove that. Let's also do the same thing for our folders here. Alright, so a great way of looking through your assets, bringing those in. Now you could also right click on your assets and you have this menu here, and you have lots and lots of options to go through with these different assets. But most importantly, instead of right clicking on your assets, you can also double click on those and they will bring up that asset in its particular editor. So in this case, because it's a static mesh, it's going to bring up the static mesh editor. And in here I can do things like looking at the object's UVs, okay, seeing how those are laid out. I could even take a look at the object's collisions, okay, and then as well as its wireframe, just to kind of take a look at how that was built. Okay. You also have some information about these particular object and how you're viewing it, how many triangles it has, how many vertices it has, UV channels, and things like that. Let's go ahead and turn those off just by left clicking on those, and that will remove any of those additional options that we had turned on. Now you also have a details panel in your static mesh editor, and you can make changes to your object here as well. Alright, now you also have the ability to do that for things like materials. So if I go into my materials folder and I double click on one of these, it's going to bring up my materials editor, and that will allow me to make changes to that as well. Now looking at this chair, you can see that that looks a little complicated there, but we'll talk about materials at a later time. Alright, so now the content browser, we've taken a look at that. We've seen how we can modify those assets by double-clicking on them, changing their details, and modifying those to fit for our specific project. So now that we've talked about the content browser, let's jump into creating a new project, or creating a new level, excuse me, and start laying out the basic form of the level that we're going to be using for this course. So we'll go ahead and get started with that next.